I was always, as a child already, very interested in learning Spanish. And in Latin America, I had a very romantic idea about Latin America, I think. And I started studying Spanish at high school. And then after I finished high school, I went to Spain for a year. And then I decided to take a bachelor and then PhD in Spanish. And that's how I got interested in translation studies, because I was more or less asked to take a course in translation studies and also to teach translation at our university. And I instantly thought it was the most fascinating topic because of I hadn't realized before how much translation changes texts, and how much translation actually can affect the society by changing texts. And so I thought it was completely fascinating, and also because it brought together my interest in both literature and language, stylistics, and current debate. So yes, that's how. Yes, the concept of voice in translation is like an umbrella for many different ideas. And that's the beauty of the concept, because it brings together different fields, such as physical voice, which could be the voice of a dubbing actor. And like dubbing is all around the world, I think, quite usual for children, common. And but it could also be the voice of people who are engaged with translations with children, such as translators or authors or publishers who tell their agenda or what they think about how translation should be or what they tell about their work. But it could also be the specific voice of a specific translator in a specific book. The way it is translated compared to another translation of the same book or another book. So that would be why it's interesting to study voice in retranslation specifically, because it can be done in a comparative perspective to how other translators worked. And also in terms of retranslation, may also be, of course, an indirect influence from earlier translations or translators. So it becomes very interesting to study retranslation, since the idea of, like, the traditional idea of translation as something that happens only between a source text and the target texts doesn't work there anymore, because there could be any number of texts involved that the translator had or had not access to when translating. I think it's a very complex question, because I think it's it's sad if things are taken out that are not typical to the target culture, or that may be seen as like strange, because that would like limit the access to other cultures. But at the same time, I clearly think that there are cases when books should not get published anymore or not get translated. I think one has to take into account that the frames of reference of children are different, or not as, I mean, they might not be aware of what the law looks like, or what the UNESCO Convention for Children, the right of the children looks like. And that's why I think it's if there are abusive scenes where parents hit their children, for example, and it's presented in a normal or normalized way, I think that is not good reading material for children, for example. So I think, yes, there are times when books should get censored. There are books that I wouldn't read for children around me, because I don't think they present a world view that I want to share with children around me. So yes. I think students, or my students, find it fascinating to work with children's books because they are so complex. And the question of the reader is very complex because you have the child reader. You usually also have to take into account an adult reader who reads a book to the child, parents, librarians. So it's a very complex readership that you translate for. And if it's a multimodal book, you have the dialogue or the interaction between text and images, which is complex, and it's been shown in many studies that translators tend to spell out more of what is in the illustrations than what happens before the book was translated, which also shows that it's very difficult for the translator not to leave certain like doubts for the readers that maybe one could trust the reader to get or to fill in by themselves. So yes, I think we should include multimodal children's books in teaching curricula, both, but not necessarily because a lot of our students will work with children's books in the future, but they will work with other complex material which involve many of the same problems that the children's books do, but in the children's books they will be presented with those aspects, but in a very condensed way, and that's what makes them such a excellent training material, I think. I think it would be important that we as scholars work more with librarians and teachers, and also publishers, of course, but it's not enough to work only with publishers, but also to spread what we know about Latin American children's books, for example, in Sweden, and create a demand that more librarians would like to buy these books to the libraries, or parents read them to children, and if they were used in school, they would like the publishing market would be easier for publishers to actually publish these books. So I think we have to think broadly and talk more about the books that we know, write about them, and make them part of our expectations for what teachers work with at school, for example. I would be against the resistance. I think it's important to see that translated books are part of, in this case, the Brazilian, what's available for children in Brazil to read. So, and I think translated books show more of the world to children, and I don't think a difference should be made between translated and original books, neither in school curriculum nor on awards. They both in both contexts they should count, because it's actually a way of seeing more things than you see if you only read literature from your own country. I think one thing I would like to learn more about, or read more research on, is how children read translated books in comparison to how they read books that are not translated. How they react to foreigners in the book, for example, or if they that I would think would be very interesting, with like reader research on children, and also more research on multimodality, on the oral aspects of children's literature and translation, and the relationship between literature and society, for example, in questions such as environment and migration and other global issues.